I'm here today with best-selling international author Allie Pleiter. Allie honed her talents in the world of popular fiction, where she still releases multiple books per year. Allie has over 50 published titles to her name, and over 1.5 million Allie Pleiter fiction and nonfiction books have been sold around the world. Allie recently released My Daily Momentum Journals, designed to help people discover and nurture their own personal momentum and productivity. Her well-known Chunky Method system trains writers at every level to formulate plans and meet deadlines in a way tailored to their unique working style. Allie runs an active coaching practice, helping writers of all kinds and all kinds of creative people be more productive. She now extends her reach to entrepreneurs, speakers, consultants, and anyone who needs to bolster their productivity and creativity in a demanding marketplace. Allie's an avid knitter, confirmed coffee junkie, and firm believer that pie makes everything better. Yay. She holds a bachelor's in speech from Northwestern University and lives in the suburbs of Chicago with her husband and the world's most adorable dog. So Allie, thanks so much for joining us.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you, Brian.
So before we start talking about your books, maybe you can just give a little bit more about your background.
Well, I've made most of my life, professional life, in writing in genre fiction. I've done a lot of work with inspirational romance and also with some parenting books. And then most recently, this year, I also branched out into mass market cozy mystery. So I've had a really diverse writing career. I didn't start out as a writer. I started out as an actor. So I've had kind of an interesting life with a lot of different things. But because of the way romance works, particularly category romance, it's really a function of being prolific. A lot of the work I do is for Love Inspired, which is the faith-based arm of Harlequin. So the little books in the grocery stores. And to be a successful Love Inspired author, you really got to produce, ideally, they want at least 3, more like 4 or 5 books a year. So wow. I needed to become a student of how to stay consistently, dependably productive and to spin sort of a lot of plates. And that's how the Chunky Method sort of formulated, and also how I began to teach other writers how I spin all those plates and without going crazy, or without going crazy most of the time, but how to do that sort of entrepreneurial multitasking that now is, sort of table stakes for an author. We need to behave like a small business now. And so doing all that other stuff while still keeping that very particular energy that creates. So that's really where I've made my career in the last couple of years. And I love talking to writers about making that process happen in an individualized way, not in the you must do X, Y, and Z if you want to be a serious writer. The Chunky Method really delves up from the inside about talking about each writer's individual work style. And so things like the Daily Momentum Journals and my coaching and my speaking were just a natural outgrowth of that.
Well, I totally agree with what you're saying in terms of like an author needs to think like an entrepreneur and act like they've got their own small business that they're running, because it's absolutely the case. And I think it's an important mindset for people to have. So I'm glad that you're, helping with that. So it's always fascinating to hear how someone got their first book deal. So everyone's got a different story and they're all fascinating. So what's your story? How did that happen for you?
Oh, I'm pretty sure you've never heard my story. It is a total God thing. Like I said, I started out as an actor, and I went from acting to directing to producing, and from producing into cultural fundraising, raising money for orchestras and theaters and things like that. And I was just having a bad day at work. I was tired of raising money. And I called a friend of mine and said, oh, I'm just so tired of raising money. Why don't I try writing a romance novel? Because it can't be that hard. That's going to go on my tombstone.
That's so funny.
And that friend that I called happened to be the editor for Berkeley Romance at the time.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
So we'd gone to school together, and she said, "Well, fine." I smarty pants because I was kind of trash talking her career. Boy, be careful what you say, right?
Really?
And she said, I dare you, go ahead and write one. And she gave me a couple of parameters and set me off. And so with no training, with absolutely no sense of what was right or wrong or anything, I sat down and wrote what ended up being the first of now 52 published books. So nobody can do it the way I did. It's complete. And I will say that person, just because I need to be very, very clear about this, she was smart enough to say when we were first talking about this, I will not buy this book, even though I could professionally, because you'll be forever defending the fact that you and I are friends. So instead, she very wisely, during the 3 years that it took me to write my first book, because I had like little kids at home and I had no idea what I was doing, she said, I will introduce you to a literary agent, and I will tell that literary agent that she can sell it anywhere but my house, so that we will always know and you will always know, and it will always be completely above board. And I bless that woman for her wisdom.
Absolutely. What great
She introduced me, to the agent who's represented my work for 22 years.
Wow.
And it was I could never have dreamed that one up. That one, I tell people that God set it up so I could take absolutely no credit, because he knew that if I could, I would. So he made sure I couldn't.
Wow, that really is a great story.
Isn't it? It's a wild story.
As I said, everyone that I talk to, that's an author that, has got a completely different avenue that, took to get where they are today. And so, but that was such excellent advice from your friend, because
she is very wise.
Makes sense, multiple levels. So, in any event, you have raised a family, lots of other things going on over the years. And you talked a little bit before we started the interview about how, journaling has really helped you develop a discipline and a motivation and, time management, to help you continue the creativity and everything else that's necessary to do this. So maybe you could tell us about, kind of how that came about, and then what the journals look like today.
Yeah. Well, I've spent so much time talking about creating processes and systems for writers. I really love that. It's a passion. I feel like I've got that kind of mindset, and lots of people don't have both, right? They're either administrators or creators, right? I seem to have, God gave me both sets of wiring. And so I've spent a lot of time teaching and putting those kinds of systems in, shall we say, flavors that writers can understand. I can speak that creative language to them. So it's really project management and time management with a very, very creative bent. But as I continued to do that, it dawned on me that I was missing a piece, that the thing that enables you to consistently enact and implement those systems and that creativity is what I call momentum. It's kind of or stick-to-itiveness or whatever, but it's different because you can't just will something into being creatively. There's a different energy. You can't sort of beat it into submission. There has to be this energy, this source of forward movement, of being pulled toward the vision of a project, that I realized is what I call momentum. And so I began to look at, all right, a lot of times momentum comes from an external source. In a sports thing, they make a goal and then it becomes farther and farther and farther and you get sort of pulled along. But what can you do to create that, to manufacture it from the inside out? And realizing that almost every writer I know is an active journaler. I mean, we think in words. I often don't know what I think about something until I write about it, or write about it at least to myself. I've always prayed. Journaling, I always write my prayers. So I took a practice that I had taken from a book called How to Write When Everything Goes Wrong, which was born from, I had a long time in my career while I was still under contract where my son was very ill. He's absolutely fine now, but it was a really dicey couple of years, 5 or 6 years of just lots of hospital visits and doctors and things that were very threatening to my creative energy. And I began this journaling process. And so I decided that I needed to introduce this journaling process, not just in the little bit that I had done in How to Write When Everything Goes Wrong, but into its own book that became a journal that a writer could actually write in. Because, we're great creatures of imagination. We can take a small problem and spin it into a giant one like that, right? We can come up with, we're the what if people. So if you write it down and you get into a practice of writing it down in a way that you can go back and look at it, then I was telling you before, when I go back and look, I think, well, this week was a total disaster. And then I go back and look at the journal and see all these daily accomplishments, and I'll get into what the parts of the daily journal are. Then I realized, no, wait, look at all these things that happened, so it's been a huge, I'd have to say it's like the key to my success and my productivity over the course of my career was this daily and then monthly practice. So I really felt compelled to share it.
Well, good for you for identifying a formula, that works so well for you. I think everybody, has a little bit different approach to all of this, but this sounds like something that could really work well for lots of people.
Yeah, I wanted to put it in a way that would make sense to a lot of different people. There's different parts of every day, and we actually, I think you can see this, we didn't even bother to use words. We used icons so that, so every day, first of all, it cues you to do some inspirational reading, whether that's scripture, whether that's, a writing book or something where you open yourself up to new possibilities every day. For me, it's almost always scripture. And then the very, very first thing you do is list 3 blessings. And that does not come naturally. And some days you have to dig really, really deep. My favorite story of the total bottom of the barrel blessing was there was one night where we'd been in the ER, I'd been in the ER with my son, and it was 2:00 in the morning. And the bottom of the barrel blessing was the vending machine coffee didn't suck. All right, you're really reaching, right? When that's the only blessing you can come up with. But if you start there, you do a couple of things. First of all, you force yourself to think positive, even in the worst of situations. And also, you sort of give your awareness marching orders that tomorrow morning, I've got to come up with 3 more blessings. So it kind of raises your radar for looking, you find what you look for. So that's always the first thing is 3 blessings or positives or whatever word you want to assign to that. And then the next one is 3 prayers or goals or whatever, just for the next 24 hours. Because, us writers, we can go off 5 years down the road. We can start compounding things into everything, when really all we really need to do is get through the next 24 hours. So things like, I need to have this successful phone call. Not I need to publish, but I need to have this successful phone call with my editor or my agent or something very, very specific. And then there's always a little checkbox next to that so that when you go back the next day, you can check off that prayer happened and that goal happened. And there's that momentum of, I needed this thing to happen and I did. I needed this thing to happen and it did. I needed this thing to happen and it did. And that's building momentum.
For everyone checking our to-do list off or crossing it off, right, is really one of these, self-affirmation steps.
It is. It is. And, we think that's sort of simplistic and silly, but it's totally supportive.
And I think better than the checkbox is just scribbling it out. I just cross it like that. It no longer exists. It's done.
I'll give you a pretty little checkbox, but if you want to take a Sharpie and just, that's fine with me.
Yeah.
And then the third section is things to avoid. This was something I started adding in the recent years. Particularly, I found this powerful in the pandemic. Things to avoid. Sometimes it's Twitter, right? Or social media or alarmist news, or we all have that friend who's great at what my other friend calls awfulizing, right?
That's a good term,
you call them with a problem and you come back with 6. So, maybe you want to avoid that. And that's then the last daily practice is pick one person to affirm or compliment or encourage. Because when you combine all of those 4 things every day, and then of course, the final step is to go back from the day before and check off all the goals that happened. Did you affirm that person? Did you avoid that? And sometimes I'm like, no. The Girl Scout cookies are all gone. I failed on that. So those kinds of things, that's the daily practice. And that's what these sort of, and then of course, there's place for us to just write our thoughts because writers need to do that. The second piece, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just love the way you structured that. I mean,
yeah.
One of the things that I found within the whole writing community is that there's so much value in collaboration, right? Yeah. Between authors, because this is not a competitive business like many other places that I've been. It's more like, well, if they like, this person's book and someone else is writing in a similar kind of genre, they're probably going to buy their book too. Right. So the more that there's cooperation and collaboration amongst authors, it's a win-win.
Yeah. If I say I like this book and you've bought my book, you're not going to not buy my next book. You're going to buy both books. So there's always, the pie is always big enough. I love my pie metaphors. The pie is always big enough for everybody. Just build a bigger pie. Yeah, exactly. No such thing as a pie too small.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the daily practice. And then I realized that I needed to make sure that I was making forward movement in some of the bigger things, the career planning, am I solving this problem, be it personal or professional or whatever. So I instituted a second practice that I call Big Thinking Day. Not especially, it's not a spiffy, it's just Big Thinking Day. And that means I stop all the tasks. I put away the to-do list. And I go back through those 30 days and I'm trying to find a page here that has Big Thinking Day. And I go back through all those blessings and see, all right, I can't do this for you to see it, but what are those top 10 positives of all those? I've created 90 of them. What are the ones that really stand out that I really should celebrate and remember and thank God for? And then what are the takeaways from all of my journaling and my reading and my writing? What sort of aha moments do I want to not lose? One of them was last year, and sometimes they're very, very simple. One of the last ones from one of my recent months was don't fret. Like concern is one thing, worry is something, but fret is just stupid little getting anxious about things you shouldn't get anxious about. And so that was kind of an aha moment for me was, you can be concerned. That's important. You can worry sometimes because it's appropriate, but there's hardly ever any reason to fret. So what are your top 10 takeaways? And then I always make sure a Big Thinking Day includes some kind of self-care. Sometimes it's doing something nice for myself, or for me, it might be getting a manicure. Or one year when it was really hot during the pandemic, I went and bought myself a kiddie pool so I could stick my feet in the water.
There you go.
Something silly like that. And then what is a larger issue that I want to take like an hour today and tackle? Is it that piece of software that I bought that I have not learned how to use in the 6 months that I've owned it? Or do I need to plan out what my next year needs to look like in terms of books? Or, when I decided to move into Cozy Mysteries, that was a big project. So I took a lot of those Big Thinking Days to sort of lay that out to the best of my ability. And then to just take some time and think, and then set some goals for the coming month. And I also set a declaration, like a prayer to myself and to God for the coming months of, I will do this. For example, the first sentence of my declaration for this month is, I will not attack today. I will enjoy today. Because I discovered in looking back at the past month that I'd sort of gotten into attack mode for the day. And I felt like the day was this thing I had to wrestle to the ground. And that's not abundant life. That's not joy. That's not happiness. It's hard to be kind while you're busy attacking the day. So I've just seen so many gifts and so many realizations and great ideas and changes and intentions to create connections that I probably would have been too busy to bother with if I hadn't done this monthly and daily practice.
I think
So
it's
of course I
similar.
had to share it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm similar in that I need some time to think strategically as opposed to tactically, right? Every once in a while, and kind of look at the big picture again and say, okay, here's what all's going on, what I want to change, in my case, unfortunately, it's always what I want to add, because I'm always launching new things. But in any event, being able to divide your thinking into both strategy and tactics, I think is always really important.
And I think if you don't have a sort of built-in system or at least a structure to do it, it's so easy to just skip it. It's so easy to convince yourself that you're too busy to spend 20 minutes every morning, or a half a day or a day a month, until, I always tell people by the end of the first book, by the end of the first 3 months, it will be so much easier to do it because you will see the difference that it makes. And then you realize you're investing that time, you're not squandering it, and big things happen.
So looking forward, are you going to continue the train of the fiction offerings?
Yes, I am one of those people who is happiest doing multiple things. I think you're kind of the same way. We talked a little bit before.
Yes.
So I will continue to do, the way I want it to happen, and hope so far it's been good, is we're going to dovetail them so that it'll be a mystery and then a romance, then a mystery, then a romance, then a mystery, then a romance. And that publication schedule is set for the next 2 years.
Wow. So how many per year total does that add up to then?
5.
5 per year? Wow.
5 per year, including some independent. So it's somewhere between, because of course I know what I'm turning in, but that doesn't necessarily mean the production schedule. So it's right now, I think it's between 3 and 4. But sometimes, and then I'll go ahead, like I put out these journals in January. So it's about 5. And when people ask me, holy Moses, how do you pull that off? I'm like, this is how I pull it off.
There's the answer.
Yeah.
So, and so in addition to, your writing, you're still doing coaching and you're still doing some teaching, writing. Teaching?
I am just way too much of a raging extrovert to just write. I started out as an actor. I love an audience. What can I say? So I love to speak. I have just been beside myself this past year. Zoom is lovely, and I'm glad we have it, but it totally doesn't do it for me. I need an audience. So I love to speak. I love to, not only do I love an audience, but I love that moment where I'm introducing it's often the chunky method to writers, and you watch that light bulb go off over their heads, and they realize, oh, that's why I do that, or that's why that's so hard for me. And that moment is high octane fuel for me. I love it. Nothing makes me happier than getting in front of writers. So I do the speaking and the coaching because I am not one of those people who can hold myself away and just write. I'd go nuts, and my husband would pay a very high price.
Well, good for you. I mean, congratulations, Allie, on being so productive and finding a formula that, both works for you that you can share with other people. That's incredibly valuable, I think, for writers.
I feel like I'm doing exactly what I'm here to do. There's nothing more wonderful than feeling like you're smack dab in your purpose.
Yes,
and that's really where I feel with all of these things. I wouldn't want to give up any of them because they all feed on each other. And quite frankly, in an economy like this, whether you're a speaker or an author or a coach, you kind of have to have a diversified business, a diversified career in order to weather the sort of wild roller coaster that we're on right now.
Absolutely.
I was super grateful to have all of those different pieces to be able to wield so that I stayed relatively steady.
Good. So if people want to find the journals or the other work, they go to
alliepleiter.com. And that will, when you go to alliepleiter.com, you can choose, do I want to learn about the coaching? Do I want to learn about the books? And then the books, of course, there are 52 of them and publishing right now. So you may have to go through a couple of drop-down menus to know exactly where you want to be. But then the coaching with the Chunky Method and the journals and all of the things that I do, I don't want to stop doing any of them. And quite frankly, the people that I meet from reading a book say, oh, I want to write. Will you coach me? Will you come speak?
Sure.
People who've heard me speak come buy the journals, that kind of thing. So it all works together.
That's just awesome. You're a great role model, I think, Allie, for, authors who, are not as far along in all those different dimensions. But, I'm really glad and to see what you've done, and congratulations. And, I'm sure you can help more folks.
Nothing would make me happier.
Good. Well, thanks for joining us on this interview.
I'm so pleased to be here. Thank you.